All right. I've got the camera facing the wrong way on my YouTube channel. Does it look okay? Yeah, it looks great here. I don't know what's going on YouTube. But hey, everybody. I'm SemJ. Here, Kath, can you come over here and see why my YouTube video is backwards? All right. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to be actually hosting a panel this weekend. That I did not think that was going to happen, but here we go. If for those of you who don't know me, I'm SemJ. I was guest of honor the first year here at Fursquared. I've been disabled since I was 11. I had a traumatic brain injury in middle school, and I've had PTSD and a brain injury since then. And in 2006, I actually started utilizing a service dog. That was my first service dog. Her name was Annie. She was a Pembroke Welsh Corgi. She passed away in 2018. And then after that was Ronnie, who was my service dog for like 10 years. And he actually just passed away this past October. Right now, I have a golden retriever service dog named Benny. He's been to Fursquared a couple of times. But going to cons with a service dog, definitely puts definitely is a different experience. Like my first 2 years going to cons, it was kind of like, it's a little bit easier to hide. But then when you start going to a furry con with people who love animals and want to hang out with them, that definitely brings a lot of attention to you. So I decided that I would just try to advocate more for people with disabilities, especially as I started noticing more and more like access concerns with people who maybe didn't understand like how service dogs benefit people, or also not just service dog related, but there's definitely been times where I didn't have my service dog with me, and and I've been in like a medical crisis, and it was difficult to find staff members that understood that. I won't name names, but one con I went to in what's it called? When was this? Maybe like 2008, 2009. I was having a medical episode at a convention, and my employer at the time was actually a dealer there, and I decided to get out of the way and go behind the table with my employer's permission, and wait for my partner to come get me. And I was yelled at by staff repeatedly because I, quote, wasn't supposed to be behind the table. We explained that it was a medical crisis and that I was not going to be behind the table for more than 10 minutes. It was just to get out of the crowd, to protect myself and to calm down. And they were just like, they would not let me sit behind the table. And it was kind of like from that moment on that I'm like, okay, I think that there needs to be more education in terms of disabilities at furry cons. There is definitely we do have a pretty significant amount of people in the fandom who are disabled, to varying degrees. I don't like playing the who's more disabled game, because that doesn't really get us anywhere. I want people to understand that the main thing that I want from this panel and from just furry cons in general is I just want an understanding. I don't want the default to be oh, you're probably faking it, which was kind of like, over the last 10 years or so, that was always kind of like the default question, is because they see someone like me. I actually just turned 35 yesterday, but I've been going to cons since I was, 18. They see, an 18 to 35-year-old person, and they're like, hey, you don't look disabled. Well, they're like, my question to you is, what does disabled look like? Do I have to be in a wheelchair? Do I have to have a cane? Do I, need to be, do I have to have my service dog with me, or I'm not disabled? I mean, I never really understand that question. Anybody can be disabled. Toddlers can be disabled. Elderly people can be disabled, and sometimes it's not super apparent. And so I would really, right at the start, is that disabilities don't look like anything. Mental, psychiatric disabilities, most of those aren't visible. Things like diabetes, not visible, unless you are watching somebody actually like inject themselves with insulin. There's definitely people who are visually impaired or hearing impaired. You do not see that. Sometimes you can with, certain disabilities, but, and then, there's people who are visually impaired that aren't like totally blackout blind. And those people are still visually impaired. So that's kind of like my main point. I know I kind of given you a lot of examples. My main thing is I would really like if we could avoid just assuming we know what disabled looks like, or just by default assuming that somebody is making something up. I've been doing my best to work with conventions and try to make them more accessible to people. A lot of people don't realize that something as simple as waiting in line for your badge is not something that's super easy for a lot of people who are disabled. And I'm not just talking physically disabled, which of course, yeah. I mean, if you have a physical disability and you're having to wait in line for 2-3 hours, I mean, obviously it's not an issue with Fursquared. The lines are always super quick there. But at some of the larger cons, it's not feasible for a lot of people to wait in line that long. And same thing with people who have like anxiety, people with autism. There's people who like waiting in a line or in a really crowded area like that. That's torture. So, you may not be able to see that, but we do need to believe those people when they say that they're not capable of standing in a line without great difficulty. Over the past, I would say like the last like 5 years, I've noticed conventions starting to get a lot better. We went from a couple of years, like maybe like 5 years ago, people basically having to wait in extra long lines with disabilities and being told by staff, well, too bad, everybody has to wait in line. To now at a lot of conventions, we're actually seeing like separate disability lines where you can actually, by choice, I mean, you don't have, like, if you have a disability, you do not have to register with disability services or use the disability line. But it's nice to have the option. You can go up there, you can say, hey, these are the type of disabilities that I have. You don't even have to be specific. You can just say, I have difficulty with, X, Y, and Z. And sometimes they can they can give you help by saying like, hey, this is our contact number if something happens, or here we'll give you the ability to not have to stand in the line, but you can stand like next to the line, or we have separate seating for you, like up front, if you have like a wheelchair or a service dog. It's definitely, it's much improved, and it makes me so happy. I mean, I've been trying to advocate for this for a really long time. I know that Aquatifer, Fursquared, MFF, those are the kind of the cons I go to all the time. Indie Fur Con, everybody's been super awesome about it. So, in the past, it's been a little iffy, not with those cons in particular, but it's nice to see that people are actually taking this seriously and being respectful and just not assuming that people are just trying to get something for nothing, basically. I think one of the biggest problems with people having there being a separate line for disabilities, like at a con registration, I think the biggest problem that I noticed is that people were concerned that people who were not disabled would take advantage of that. And I don't think that's a valid reason to not apply or not have accommodations, is because abled people might take advantage of it. That's not a reason to withhold accommodations like that. And thankfully, a lot of conventions are now doing that. And it's not, we're not looking at it as, well, people might take advantage of it. It's there are people who need this, and whether or not people take advantage of it is, irrelevant. So, I mean, I'm kind of looking in the Discord chat right now, and I'm looking in my YouTube channel, which is still backwards, but I apologize to those people. Let's see. A lot of people in the groups are talking about, the disabilities that they have. And there's a lot of people. I mean, especially now with, if we start going to conventions again, we're going to have to a lot of disabled people are going to have to deal with, now we've got COVID. There's a lot of disabled people who have been severely impacted by COVID, probably more than most people, because some of us cannot go. I work from home. I own my own business, so thankfully that's not an issue for me. But there's people who haven't been able to work because it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous for them to go to work because of, they're immunocompromised, or they just, they don't have the physical capacity to deal with it, or they're just the anxiety from it is too much. So unfortunately, a lot of disabled people have been disproportionately affected by COVID. And when we start going back to conventions, we're going to have to understand that there are people who maybe they can't get vaccinated because they have a cancer or some sort of condition that doesn't allow them to get vaccinated, or maybe there's people who are going to prefer to just still keep masks on, and we have to be accepting of that. And if we can, and we're able to, we should try to get vaccinated. We should get vaccinated to protect those people who are immunocompromised that cannot get vaccines. So even when conventions start happening again, the pandemic's not going to be over for some people. It's going to take a while before everybody starts feeling a little bit more comfortable, before everybody is safe. We kind of want to build up some herd immunity, things like that. And for some disabled people, I mean, conventions might not be an option. And that's just something that unfortunately is, a result of the pandemic. But there's so much we can do as a community to support and reach out to individuals like that, whether it's including them in other ways, maybe remotely, kind of like what we're doing now, or, even helping them fiscally. Definitely there's been, it's been rough for everybody, but I mean, man, I rarely leave the house. I had, in addition to the brain injury and and PTSD. I also have really bad asthma and kind of like post-Lyme syndrome from having Lyme disease. So my immune system is a little iffy. So I've been like double masking since the beginning of the pandemic. And now they're like, oh yeah, everybody should be double masking now. And I'm like, I've been doing that. So I'm actually fortunately eligible to be vaccinated. I'm going to be getting my first COVID vaccination this week on the 3rd, I think it is. And because they have the governor of Illinois has now included people with disabilities and high risk conditions, whereas like originally in group 1B, we were not included. And there was a lot of people abdicating that, hey, there's a lot of people who are immunocompromised and we're kind of getting left out. We're kind of getting pushed back farther and farther. And it's just not, it's cruel because a lot of us like are just like, please, there's only so much we can do. Like, can we please be included? And thankfully in Illinois, at least, people with disabilities have been included in group 1B plus. It's like the extended version of it. So anybody, honestly, like anybody who's in Illinois that is disabled that, does need the vaccine, feel free to contact me. I'm at SemJ on Telegram and at SemJCBD on Twitter. If you guys need to get in contact with me, I can try and help you the best I can. It's complicated trying to get a vaccine, but if you guys do need help, let me know. If you're in that group 1B in Illinois, if you're in another state, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's confusing enough. It's confusing enough on just to do it for myself in this state. It's too much. I'm reading in the chat that a lot of people are not eligible yet. I mean, we're getting there. So I noticed that we were talking about like what it means to be legally considered disabled. I actually want to talk about that. So the Americans with Disabilities Act states that anybody with a physical or mental impairment that causes any kind of change, inability to do something in their, that everybody else would do, like in their everyday life, that is considered a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So any physical or mental impairment that prohibits you from doing something, or that is definitely. There's a lot of people that fall into that category, and that doesn't make it any less valid. There's people who have disabilities. There's and that's another thing that I want to talk about, is that just because you're not on disability assistance from the government, that doesn't mean you're not disabled. So if you go to get disability assistance from the government and they deny you, that doesn't mean you're not disabled. That just means the government denied you from receiving benefits associated with that. And even with that, like, most people get denied their first time. So that is, again, it doesn't mean anything. Disability is, a physical or mental impairment. Like, the definition is very clear. Yeah, and that is true. A lot has changed. I know in 2015, they ended up making a FAQ for specifically service dogs, because there was a lot of questions regarding service dogs and the difference between service dogs and emotional support animals. There's been a lot of changes in the last year in regards to emotional support animals, in particular in regards to airlines, which a lot of people have been cheering that they have now banned emotional support animals from airplanes. And, yeah, will that cut down on people who are just passing their pets off? Yes, but an emotional support animal started out as a thing for disabled people. It's, they're not service dogs. They don't have public access like service dogs do, but having an emotional support animal on a plane was life-changing for certain people with, psychiatric disabilities. And now, unfortunately, because people have taken advantage of that, they got rid of it completely, which, as I spoke to earlier, just because able people take advantage of something doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it for disabled people. And unfortunately, the airlines have made the decision that it's too much for risk. It's very unfortunate. It will not affect me personally because I have a service dog, which are absolutely allowed on airplanes. But I know many people who have been, actually disabled people who have benefited from emotional support animals. But so a lot of people are cheering on that new rule, but I don't think we should cheer on taking any kind of rights away from disabled people. So, yeah. So, that's just another example of just because able people take advantage of it doesn't mean we should take it away from everybody else. So in regards, like kind of going back away from service dogs and back into being disabled at a convention, anybody who's watching, feel free to share stories about, if you want them shared, about things that have happened to you at cons that maybe weren't so great in terms of disability accommodation. You can even share stories about like how cons have been awesome to you. I will say that not a furry convention, but I think a really good example of a con that gets it is ASEN, which is a anime convention that runs in the same hotel as MFF. They're usually, I think they're like in May. I don't know. It's been a whole year since I've been to a con at this point, so I don't know when all the cons happen. And they figured it out. Like they have it so you can request like accessible seating. They have like numbers you can call. They have, they're just, you can go in there and register. And again, it's all optional. We shouldn't make this, disabled people register for, like we don't. So if it like, basically like when I was in college, if you were disabled, you didn't have to register with disability services. But if you did, you could request accommodations like extra time on tests, maybe like somebody who takes notes for you, somebody who can read you your test instead of having to, visually look at it. I know that I was registered with disability services, and I think the only thing that I had requested was flexible attendance, because sometimes going to work, this is why I own my own business, because going to work and school is, it's not so easy, especially with somebody with PTSD. Like, especially like, in mornings when you wake up from like nightmares and stuff like that, like you're not capable of driving into work or whatever. Like it can be bad sometimes. So, I think that's another thing that we should consider with furry conventions too, is that, if somebody doesn't show up for, an event, or maybe somebody like one of your friends wants to spend more time in the room instead of hanging out with you, whatever. Maybe they're having like a sensory overload, or maybe the hallways are too crowded and they're not able to navigate in their chair or in their cane, or if they're visually impaired, they're bumping into people and it's difficult. I mean, I think we should respect that, and I think we should definitely look out for our disabled friends instead of thinking like, oh, they're such an inconvenience because they never want to come to the parties with me. They never show up to panels when I ask them to. I think we should definitely respect that and realize that not everybody can operate on the same level as everybody else. And that's true for everybody, not just disabled people. So trying to see. Yeah, I guess on YouTube, we are definitely not going to have a backwards, or we're going to have a backwards stream. So you guys are only going to hear me talking and you get to look at the back of my desk. So, yeah. So yes, in the YouTube chat, we're talking about sensory overload is especially common with people with autism, people with PTSD, and sometimes a furry convention can be like a sensory overload. Like it's just, I mean, think about it. You've got people in costumes, you got people screaming, you got people with microphones, people running through the hallways, people blasting music through their backpacks. Sometimes we do these things and we just kind of like take them for granted, but we don't realize how they're affecting other people. And I think we need to, as a society, be more aware of that instead of treating people with disabilities as an inconvenience, basically. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really need to touch on. I've been just kind of rambling for the last half hour. So now that we're having these virtual conventions, I would have liked to have some sort of way to transcribe this as I was doing it. I'm still learning ASL, so I can't do it. I'm not confident enough to sign this. I would also like to say that sometimes the virtual conventions are not as accessible to people with disabilities. I feel like Fursquared's done a fine job. I don't have any complaints. I know that we had an interpreter in a couple of the panels, which is awesome. A sign language interpreter. I know that we talk about, I know Citrine had a panel about what it's like to be blind in the furry fandom. I feel like Fursquared has done a really good job of reaching out, saying, what do you guys need? What do you guys want to do? And I feel like they definitely, a lot of conventions could definitely take heed and actually, I know that Aquatifer is also really good at it too, and MFF has gotten a lot better. And a couple years ago there was a lot to be desired, but it has gotten better. So we're headed in the right direction in this fandom, and having panels and discussions like this is always super important. The biggest thing is listen to what disabled people have to say. Don't assume that oh, well, we can do this and then all the disabled people are accommodated. Ask disabled people, ask us. There are so many disabled people in the fandom. Like, we have whole Telegram groups dedicated to other disabled people in the fandom, and so many of us have great ideas, and we're just as intelligent. We are just as involved in the fandom. We are just as important. We're just as valid as everybody else. And none of us wants to be a burden on anybody else, but we just have to stop treating it like that. We have to start treating it like, hey, this is someone we care about. We want to share our fandom with, these people as well. We care about these people. And I just think it's really, really important that we do not treat people with disabilities as a burden. Let's not be accusatory, like saying, oh, you're faking it, blah, blah, blah. That can be pretty traumatizing. I've had a couple of incidents in the furry fandom where I've been confronted about my service dog in particular, and being accused by con staff that my dog is an emotional support animal and not a service dog, therefore not being allowed at the convention, which I agree. Emotional support animals should not be allowed at conventions because they're not trained. Whereas a service dog, I mean, you guys, the stuff that my dogs have had to go through in order just to do public access like that. I mean, like furry convention, like I consider that to be like the doctorate exam of like service dog training. Like, you've got like your puppy class, which is like preschool. You've got, some public access training. We're kind of doing some like middle school stuff. And then we start doing like some of the more task training, which is more of like the high school, college kind of thing. And then when you're talking about like a convention, when you're at a convention, I mean, especially like something like MFF, you're talking 10,000 people. We all know that no matter what con you're at, the dealer's den is always super crowded. Like I remember at one convention, I was walking around with one of my visually impaired friends, and we both this dealer's den was so crowded, and they had like a strip of like extension cords going across the floor of the dealer's den, and both me and my friend almost went down. I've had my service dog kicked at conventions, not on purpose, on accident, because a dealer's den wasn't laid out appropriately enough where we would have enough room to get through. These are all things to definitely take into account. If we can do it, upload it later with closed captioning, I would love that. I think that would be great. I could potentially go through and translate all my rambling. But yeah, so, like I said, I've been confronted by staff about faking it because, like I said, I've had a service dog since I was 20 years old, and me at 20, I mean, you see me and disabilities come in all shapes and sizes. I tend to be extremely extroverted. I tend to be extremely kind of hyperactive and big movements. And, you see me using my hands so much during this whole thing, that's the Italian in me. And they just, you see this and people are like, oh, wow. I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Let's just not assume that. If I say I'm disabled, just listen to me. Nobody owes you nobody owes you like a diagnosis list. They're not even doing that. You can't even do that like for like airplanes or anything like that. Like nobody owes you a diagnosis list. It's not really anyone's business. So, if somebody asks for accommodations, as long as they're reasonable, I mean, an accommodation can't be, oh, well, I don't have money for the dealer's den, so you should buy me one of everything in the dealer's den. That's not considered reasonable, but maybe making the hallways in the dealer's den wider, maybe making the tables a little bit more easily accessible, maybe having hours where people with sensory overload can enjoy a dealer's den without everybody else. Like, you know, they've been doing that a lot with with COVID. They've been having disability and senior hours at restaurants, or I'm sorry, not restaurants, at grocery stores. And I mean, we could potentially do something like that at furry conventions where we have like an hour where maybe there's no speakers allowed, there's no flashing lights allowed, there's no nothing, and that'll give people with disabilities a chance to enjoy something like the Dealer's Den or Artist Alley without having to put themselves through so much turmoil and stress. And yeah, like people, I see that with people with fibro and lupus, same thing. You know, like I said, I constantly, another thing that, you know, because I have a brain injury and PTSD, I'm very open about what's my disability is. And I do that as educational. Nobody else is required to have that. Nobody else is required to do that. I'm doing it to try and make it easier for other people to understand. But, you know, if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what's wrong with you? Like, why would anyone want to answer that? But yeah, you know, if you ever want to talk to somebody about disabilities or service dogs or anything like that, you are always more than welcome to come to me and ask. I will do if I don't know an answer, I will do my best to look it up for you. I currently sit on the Illinois Service Dog Legislative Task Force, so we actually write the laws for the state of Illinois in terms of service dogs. I've spoken in front of, when I lived in Arizona, I've spoken in front of the state Senate there in terms of service dog law and what's important and like what we shouldn't do and what we should do. So, I mean, if you guys ever have any questions or you guys ever have like an issue at a convention in terms of access, definitely ask, you know, come to me. I don't mind, you know, I actually, I in college, I was a communications major and I specialized in technical writing and public speaking. So I don't mind doing those sorts of things for people where I can write a letter, I can explain things, I can make something simple. I mean, if you ever see something like on a website and you need me to break it down for you, I can do that kind of thing for you. I'm good at keeping it simple. But yes, exactly what Quack said is it is no one's job to educate you on disabilities. So, you know, and that goes for like, you know, like I'll just use service dog as an example. There's a lot of like when people come up to me in public and they ask me about my service dog, I will always talk to them. Like, I mean, almost always. Like, there's very few instances where I actually will just like walk away and like ignore people. Most of the time, I will engage and talk and whatever. In terms of right now, as long as they're wearing a mask. If they're not wearing a mask, I will try to get away from you as soon as possible. But when people come up to me, they ask me, and one of the things that I've heard a lot is that they tell me, oh, you're the nicest service dog handler I've ever met. Most of them are like super rude to me or whatever. And I'm like, look, it's none of their business. You know, it's not their job to educate you. It's not my job either, but I just do it because I feel like it makes other people's lives easier when I put that information out there. But again, that's something I choose to do. And that's on me. You know, same thing. Like sometimes, you know, I'll let people I let people pet my service dog. That doesn't mean my dog's not a service dog. It just means that, hey, I let somebody pet my service dog today. Not everybody has to allow that. But yeah, they, hang on, I'm reading these comments. We got some really good comments going on here. So yeah, I really like the idea of like a sensory friendly dealer's hours. So let's see, what else? What do we got? Yeah, with having less light effects. So like if somebody at like a table has like a flashing display or something like that, maybe tone it down for sensory hours. And with music and stuff. I don't know what we can do for concerts. I mean, unless we had like a separate concert. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think in terms of like, I am the person who founded Who's Lion. How we could make a more sensory friendly Who's Lion. I think that would be really cool. We can always improve. So we just, we can always improve. We can always make things better for people. And it's actually really interesting is because sometimes when we're doing something for somebody who's disabled, we'll find people who are abled, who are like, what? I actually like this better. I like, I don't have a disability, but I prefer the sensory, like the low sensory concerts. Or maybe they realize, oh my God, I didn't realize I had a disability. I didn't realize that I had I didn't realize that I had this trouble until I was given an alternative. And now I'm like, oh my God, that's why I was so stressed out when I was, in Dealer's Den, at concerts, at Who's Lion, or in the hallways. I think that if we could, as a fandom, come up and, try to be as accepting and cool and accommodating as possible, I think that's awesome. Oh, I heard, so FWA has a silent disco? How does that work? And I like the idea of like a Bluetooth rave too, like, have it be like one of the things that I actually, probably one thing that people don't know about me is because of the brain injury, I have something that's called hyperacusis. And that makes like sounds like extra loud and extra bad and sometimes triggering. So a lot of people don't notice about me is I generally will have headphones, like Raycon headphones with me, or earplugs for when things get a little bit too overwhelming. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know how you're supposed to have a sensory friendly comedy panel, but I mean, if someone can figure it out, I mean, I think the furry fandom can figure it out. We will definitely figure it out at some point. So, yeah. I mean, did anybody, like, I guess, we're what are we at? We're at like a couple minutes, like 7 minutes left. I was wondering if anybody had any questions, ideas, things they wanted to say, things they wanted me to talk about. Again, if you ever need you ever have any questions in regards to disability accommodation, definitely come to me. I saw they put my socials up. I am absolutely open to, if I don't message you back, it's because I'm sleeping or because I'm working or I'm driving. Other than that, I'm almost always on my phone. So yeah, that's actually a great idea, is that we could have earplugs like just available, like in ops or something like that. I think that would be really cool. Yeah. And Quack, I have a pair of noise canceling headphones. Those are like, that's what I'm wearing right now. I have my Bose headphones on, and I sleep with these things on, cause I live next to a street that, is kind of loud, and sometimes that can keep me up. Yeah, I just sleep on my back though. So a lot of people who ask me, oh, how do you sleep with one of those on your ear? And I'm like, I sleep on my back. So yeah, I think definitely a box of earplugs are definitely a good start. But I do know that there are people who don't like stuff like in their ears. So that's a whole nother thing. I think the biggest thing that we should take away from this is that we should reach out to other people in the disability community and say, hey, what can we do to make conventions better for you? What can we do to help? What can we do? Or would us having headphones, would that be good? Would us having a sensory, friendly panels, would that be good? Maybe I think a big thing is that I think con staff, I know you guys already do your job for free. And I think, you guys are awesome. But I think that if we could have people, volunteer to people like me volunteer to potentially educate con staff on what kind of things can be done to make conventions more accessible to everybody. So yeah, and I'm the same way, Quick. I always used to hate earplugs, and I hate earbuds because I have really tiny ears, and which is really funny because my character is an African wild dog. So all of the plugs or all the little headphone things or the little earbuds pop out of my ears. It's so annoying. But I found those Raycons, and those actually fit my ears. That's my first pair of earbuds that actually fit my ears. So I'm I love those things. So okay, so FC created a accessibility coordinator position. Yeah, I haven't been to FC since 2012, so it's been a hot minute since I've been to that con. Yeah, I will say that I do remember a big problem with FC was particularly the dealer's room. Other than that, I always had fun at that con, but the dealer's room was always so kind of oddly laid out that I had issues navigating it. It was just always way too crowded. So I just kind of skipped the dealer's room. But other than that, I didn't have any other issues with them disability related. They were usually pretty chill. And I've heard that that's gotten better too. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. And I mean, if you guys want to touch base with me and, we could talk about this. I like I said, I am part of a bunch of disability related Telegram chats, and, we could definitely, we all like to work together to try and make things more accessible to everybody. So, okay. Yeah, I haven't, like I said, I haven't been to FC in a couple of years, but splitting it into two smaller rooms, that sounds much better. Much, much better. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I loved doing the panel. I was a little nervous the whole day because I'm not as good at live streaming as I am with talking in person. So I was been super nervous about this all day, but you guys have been super awesome. And yes, MFF does have an accessibility division now, and they are awesome. They gave us little wristbands for accessibility accommodations, and I actually still have one in my car that I see every single day. So yeah, I think that's super cool. I think that's great. So yeah, and so I in the one chat, come here. Somebody wanted to see my new puppy. Come here. Come here. He's sleeping. Come here. Come here. Come here. So before we all go, this is Atticus. He's 4 months old. He's super cute. He's very sleepy right now. So, but yeah, that's him. He's very sleepy. But yeah, I definitely appreciate all your guys' help, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. It's been too long since I've seen everybody. It's so weird. I can't believe it's already March again, basically. I thought maybe because my birthday was yesterday, I thought maybe we'd be out of the pandemic by my birthday, because I noticed everybody was having quarantine birthdays. So I got to experience my first pandemic birthday yesterday. So yeah, so that was fun. But yeah, again, Atticus is a great name. And do I really have 69 viewers? Oh, and yesterday, like, I know I keep talking about my birthday. I swear I'm not trying to get attention, but my birthday yesterday was my 420th month birthday. So yeah, I got 69 viewers on my 429th month birthday. So yeah, I'm cool with that. So all right, well, I'm gonna let it go because I'm already 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds over. So I hope you guys have a great day. And again, feel free to contact me if you ever have any disability related questions. I don't know what I got to do. Skylar, there we go.